ever noticed that most of what I cover on this channel is bad disability representation? Trust me, that's not because I went looking for bad representation. It's just that it is so common for disability to be written badly in film and media, especially with the widespread problem of systemic ableism within our country. I always tell people the best way to know if your disability representation is at least passable is if there isn't a way that your plotline of your film could still make sense even if the disabled person could easily be replaced with a dog. Some examples of film that don't pass the dog test are What's Eating Gilbert Grape, Rain Man, and more recently, Music, a film that failed the dog test so spectacularly that my editor and I couldn't even finish watching the film for our podcast while absolutely trashed.
Where it's like the city's on fire and like everybody's dead and they're like, we did it, Patrick, we made a movie about autism.
Yes, that is exactly what this movie is.
No.
Sia is buying drugs. Wait till you hear her reason.
No.
Right? I told you this movie is bad. It's so self-indulgent.
Holy shit.
It's so self-indulgent.
Oh my god.
Apparently she originally wanted Beyonce, but Beyonce was busy.
Now, that's not to say that you can't enjoy these bad disability representation films or that they're overall bad movies. Many of them, with the exception of Music, are very well written, well performed, and directed. There's a reason that these films are famous. Unfortunately, they tend to treat disabled characters like props with no real agency. It's rare that I find disability representation that is actually good, especially with disabled characters who have high support needs. So, when I was asked to watch an early screening of How to Ruin the Holidays, I was shocked to find there are some people who know how to write disabled characters and write them well. Shockingly enough, even though I am a Jew, I love a good Christmas movie, with some of my favorites being The Night Before, Home Alone, and Home Alone 2. It's a good movie, damn it. Tim Curry is in it. But, as you can tell, I like a good Christmas movie where shenanigans ensue, and dear God, do shenanigans ensue in How to Ruin the Holidays. The film centers around Amber Nash as Michelle, an actress and comedian trying to make it in the business as a plus-sized performer. Michelle gets a call from her sister who claims that their father is having health issues, so Michelle must return home to help take care of their disabled brother, Mark, played by Luke Davis. Upon returning home for Christmas, for the first time in years, Michelle finds out that her father is not ill at all, and this was all a ruse to get Michelle to return home and convince their father to sell his house due to the bank foreclosing on him. If you need an example as to how good this film is, their father is portrayed by Colin Mochrie. I say again, their father is portrayed by Colin Mochrie. You guys don't know who Colin Mochrie is? He's only the funniest member of the hit improv show. God, I just said hit improv show. I really am a dork. Whose line is it anyway? Colin Mochrie is famous amongst fans of the show for his hilarious punnery and also being an overall good person. There's actually an episode of Whose Line, Season 13, Episode 2, where one of the other cast members told a transphobic joke, and Colin called the other performers out on the joke and refused to go along with transphobia.
PA, I've been sent to cover up your...
Oh, okay.
Hi, I'm Dick.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Dick. I don't want you to be seen.
Hey, get off my back, Aisha!
Being the father of a transgender daughter himself, he's a staunch LGBTQ ally and just an overall nice person. So when I was given an early screening of How to Ruin the Holidays, I was thoroughly excited to see Colin Mochrie playing a doomsday survivor libertarian father who is also, not shockingly, a good disability ally. As much as I love fangirling over Colin Mochrie, he's not the reason that I am making this video. At least, not the sole reason. How to Ruin the Holidays tackles disability in such a wonderful way that even though the producers only asked me to make a TikTok about the film as promotion, I wanted to give it the full treatment so that I could go over the reasons why How to Ruin the Holidays has amazing disability representation. But before we get into it, first things first, are you subscribed to the channel? Apparently a lot of people who watch my channel aren't subscribed, and the button is right there. It wants to be clicked. So click it. Click the button.
Do it.
Now, of course, for some disclaimers, Oh, for once I don't have any disclaimers. Oh my god, I don't need wine for this! But hey, it is the holidays, so let's cozy up in here. Now that I have my jammies and my hot chocolate, let's get into why I love How to Ruin the Holidays. As you all know, I'm a proponent of the stance that disabled characters should only be played by disabled actors, an opinion I continue to hold despite the very intense backlash I've received. And I don't think any film exemplifies this stance better than this movie. Michelle's younger brother, Mark, is disabled, and though the film is not specific, it's likely a form of cognitive disability, otherwise known as intellectual disability. The actor who plays Mark, Luke Davis, has an intellectual disability. You can tell from his performance that even though he is still acting, there's a certain level of lived experience that informs Mark's performance. And yes, it is still acting if a disabled person plays a disabled person. I can't even believe I have to say that. This sort of disability cannot be fully replicated by a non-disabled performer. Compare Luke Davis's performance to Sean Penn's in the film I Am Sam. Even though Sean Penn is acting, and acting rather well, there is a disconnect in his performance. It's not informed by real-life experience, whereas with Luke Davis, you can see that he didn't have to do any research to prepare for the role. He just got to exist and disappear into the film in a way that any actor should be able to do when playing an everyday person in a film. Now, to further why this is such important casting, how many other characters do you think Luke Davis can play? For performers like Luke Davis specifically, the only characters he can play are characters who are disabled, which there are very few written into film and television each year. If a non-disabled actor came in and got this part, it not only would have felt less authentic, but would have literally been taking an opportunity away from someone who may not get another opportunity for a long, long time. When I say that disabled actors should be the only ones playing disabled characters, it's because of performers like Luke Davis. I can play neurotypical. I might have another opportunity. He might not, and that's why casting is so important. I bet you never thought that I would ever say that ableism is a good thing. There's a specific kind of ableism that happens in this film that is handled really well. Oftentimes you'll hear me talk about something called infantilization, which is when a grown adult is treated like they're a child. This doesn't happen exclusively to disabled people. It's often seen happening to men when they're asked to be held accountable for their actions.
I was an immature child of 38. I'm not that guy anymore. Vance Wagner respects women.
Or when white woman tears, where a white woman will say or do something racist, but if she cries about it, people will jump to her defense and say things like, yeah, she did something racist, but she didn't know it was racist, so you have to teach her. I'm sorry, Kirsten. You didn't know that saying the N-word was racist? Seems sus to me.
I can excuse racism, but I draw the line at cruelty.
You can excuse racism.
So,
with disabled people, infantilization is something that typically happens against our will, as people tend to see disabled people, especially those of us with autism or cognitive disabilities, as children trapped in adult bodies. This could not be further from the truth, and it can be extremely hurtful. I can't tell you how many times people have given me that kindergarten teacher voice when I've asked a fairly reasonable question. Hey, how do I do my taxes? Okay, well, sweetie, when you work a job, they take out a little bit of money every check, and these are called taxes. Yeah, I'm aware of what they're called. Then, at the beginning of the year, the law, the rules that the government make up, say that you have to pay a certain amount of that money back. Yes, I'm sharking aware of that, Karen. Now can you point me to the nearest accountant or not? In How to Ruin the Holidays, there is a certain level of infantilization that happens to Mark, but it's almost always called out, and not just by Mark. The other characters do some self-reflection and wonder if they're infantilizing him. Take, for example, this scene where Michelle and her sister, Andrea, decide to do the time-old tradition of smoking something that's not a cigarette, or a pipe, or a vape. It's weed. They're smoking weed. Usually in films like this, they wouldn't allow a cognitively disabled person to partake in said herbal substances, but Michelle and Andrea ask themselves if the only thing holding Mark back from joining in the fun is them and their infantilization of him. They decide to ask him, not force or persuade, if he wants to join them. This never happens in movies with disabled characters like Mark. We see a lot of movies and shows about romantic relationships and sex, but we never see disabled characters getting to choose to smoke or drink or party. This was a small moment, but honestly, it was really important when it comes to disability representation. Every time the film makes it seem like the characters might infantilize Mark, they push back and treat him like an adult. There's even a scene where Michelle walks in on him watching a, let's just say, adult show. Rhymes with corn.
What is going on?
What?
This is not okay, Mark.
What the hell's going on?
This is going on.
Oh, it's fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
In what world big deal?
At first, it seems like Michelle is freaking out because Mark shouldn't be watching such things, but it turns out she's just upset that he's watching it in the living room where other people may see it, which is a completely reasonable thing for her to be upset about. Michelle even holds Mark accountable when he does things that aren't okay, like using the R slur. The film even manages to sneak in a little debate over whether or not he's saying it in a manner that is reclaiming it or just using it as a slur. This movie was either written by a disabled person or someone who actually listens to the community. They address ableism in a lot of different ways, and I'm just so appreciative of that. There is still a lot more to discuss about this film and all the things that it does well, but before we get into the rest of it, let's have a quick meme break and a word from our sponsor. Santa, what's the story of your reindeer names? Why, I named them after memories, like Prancer frolicking through the snow. What about Donner? A dark consonant settles on Santa's face. The year was 1847. Snowfall had trapped us in the Sierra Nevada. That's silly. Don't let my intelligence distract from the fact that I am stupid. High intelligence, low wisdom, or high wisdom and low intelligence. High intelligence and high wisdom, but terrible, terrible luck on the rolls. High intelligence and wisdom, but with permanent disadvantage. Wait, that's just ADHD. And the tism. There's a reason why I sell autistic bimbo. I don't let my intelligence distract from the fact that I am a dumb bimbo. I think I may have found a project I'd actually enjoy doing, helping these cats and dogs. They should be rewarded for not being people. I hate people. Me too, April, me too. The reason Michael Caine and Tim Curry are so good in their respective Muppet movies is that Michael Caine treats the Muppets as fellow actors and Tim Curry treats himself as a fellow Muppet. That is a spot-on analysis, honestly. That is one of my absolute favorite Muppet movies. And now time for the word from our sponsors. Anti-disestablishmentarianism. Fork. Worcestershire. These words from our sponsors were selected by our Patreon, which you can join our Patreon via the link down below, because we don't get paid a lot for these, and hot chocolate is not free. Please give us money. Please do it. Please. Pretty please. Those were some good laughs and guilt-tripping sponsorship messages. Now, back to the review. Though this film has disability as one of its themes, it's not its core theme. It's not learning to love because a disabled person is in their lives. The core theme of the film surrounds family and how to repair difficult relationships. Disability is a huge factor in that, and trust me, when you're a disabled person or have a disabled person in your family, disability is always going to be a huge factor, and that's okay. But it's not overly discussed in the film, because that's not really what the film is about. Instead of using disability and ableism to drive the plot, the film uses disability to inform the characters and their choices. Michelle goes home to see her father because she worries about her disabled brother. The father lets Mark do what he wants, so long as he doesn't hurt anyone, because for so long he's watched people treat Mark as though he should apologize just for existing. Disability may have been the driving start of some of their choices, but the film treats it like it's a normal but very real part of their lives. As I mentioned before, I have a test for movies about disability, a test that I call the dog test, because oftentimes disabled characters can be easily replaced with a misbehaving dog and the plot of the story will still make sense. For example, look at how closely the relationships between dogs and humans are in the film Dog, and how closely it resembles relationships between the characters in Rain Man, or how Of Mice and Men resembles Old Yeller. It's not that disabled characters resemble animals, it's that the characters lack agency in the same way animals in the film lack agency. Even if they're listed as main characters, disabled characters are often treated as little more than props. They don't make choices that affect the plot. They're just along for the ride, and all agency and plot driving comes from non-disabled characters. How to Ruin the Holidays is not like that. Mark is a character in the same way Andrea or the father are characters. They make choices based off of their experiences, and other people react accordingly. Sometimes Mark says something wrong or makes a mistake, but the other characters don't treat him badly for it. Hell, Mark wakes Michelle up every morning, early in the morning, and she yells at him the same way I yell at my own sisters. He's not the disabled character. He's a member of the family, just like everyone else. Okay, I know this has nothing to do with disability, but I do love the way that this film discusses the struggles of being a plus-size woman in the film industry. Parts are limited, and when you get them, they're never the main character, just the funny fat friend. When you do audition for a plus-size part, you're always going up against your plus-sized friends, even if they're completely different looks or a completely different race. Similarly to how disabled people are never allowed to be anything other than disabled, plus-size actresses are never allowed to be anything other than generic plus-size character. It's such a nice touch in this film. And also, I know exactly how the struggling actor life feels. It's not fun, and no, your agent never responds to you. Ever. How to Ruin the Holidays was such a surprise and a delight to experience. It was funny, heartwarming, and I couldn't tell where it was going, but I loved every minute of it. This was the first time I've ever been personally invited to see an early screening, and I could not have had a better experience. Side note, I found out after the fact that the script for this was entered in the same screenplay contest as my own feature-length film, and even though both of our scripts were semi-finalists, this one won over mine. If there's any film about disability that won such a contest, I'm really glad it was this one. I'm not sure if the writer, Kevin Jalise, is disabled himself, but he very much understands how to normalize disability. I always say nothing about us without us, and this movie really exemplified it. It's currently out streaming on Amazon Prime right now, so if you're looking for a good holiday movie with even better disability representation, be sure to check this one out. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please be sure to like and share it, as that really helps with the algorithm, and with films like this, I really want to get the message out there. Speaking of messages to get out there, this week's Patreon shout out goes to Michael Laybourne. Michael has been a subscriber to our Patreon for a long time, and they are also an amazing human, published author, and head of a community movement called Decolonize Your Bookshelf, which focuses on promoting novels from indie authors of color who are often ignored or overlooked. So if you want to check out an amazing author as well as some others, be sure to check out Michael Laybourne on TikTok, Instagram, and Patreon. Thank you again so much for watching, and thanks for hitting that subscribe button. Push the button. All hail the subscribe button!